Power never truly disappears. It only changes hands, shifts its shape, and hides behind new faces. Every society, no matter how modern it appears, still moves according to the same invisible currents that guided people centuries ago. You feel these currents in small moments: who gets listened to, who gets ignored, who sets the tone in a room without saying a word. Most people sense it, but only a few ever study it. Power shows itself in decisions made behind closed doors, in alliances formed quietly, and in the subtle hierarchy that emerges wherever humans gather. It doesn't need permission to exist, and it doesn't wait for anyone's approval. It simply flows toward confidence, competence, and clarity. When you begin noticing where it accumulates, you start understanding why some lives move smoothly while others constantly collide with resistance. These patterns appear quiet on the surface, yet they influence far more than people admit. Once you recognize that power never fades, you stop viewing life as random. You begin to see why certain people rise, not because they are lucky, but because they read the room with sharper eyes. They notice tension before it spreads, opportunity before it announces itself, and weakness before it becomes obvious. They move deliberately, aware that every environment has its own internal order. Understanding this order changes the way you respond to everything around you. Most people drift through life without noticing these forces, reacting to situations they never learned to read. But the moment you start paying attention, the world becomes clearer. You see how power concentrates around purpose, how it avoids confusion, and how it strengthens those who stay grounded. From that point on, you walk differently, not with aggression, but with the calm awareness that nothing moves without reason, and that awareness stays with you. The world looks different when you stop reacting to it and start observing it. Instead of being pulled by emotion, you begin to notice the structure beneath every interaction. You see who speaks with intention and who speaks to fill silence, who leads without trying and who tries without leading. This shift doesn't make you cold, it simply gives you distance, enough to understand what is actually happening rather than what people want you to feel. When you adopt this perspective, situations that once felt personal stop holding the same weight. You start reading behavior instead of taking it to heart. A careless comment becomes a sign of someone's insecurity, not a wound. A delay becomes a clue about priorities, not a slight. You learn that most actions reveal motives long before words do, and that clarity comes from watching patterns, not reacting to impulses. This way of seeing doesn't demand perfection, it asks for awareness. And once you cultivate it, you notice how much energy people waste on reactions that lead nowhere. They argue over misunderstandings, chase validation, and defend positions they never examine. Meanwhile, you move quietly, paying attention to what matters: tone, timing, intention, the subtle shifts that show where things are heading. The more you observe, the more the world slows down, and the easier it becomes to navigate it. You begin to realize that strategic thinking isn't about controlling others, it's about controlling how you interpret what unfolds around you. When emotion no longer blinds you, decisions become clearer. You stop chasing every distraction and start choosing your direction with intention. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but each moment of awareness strengthens it. With time, you step into a quieter, sharper version of yourself, one that sees meaning where others see noise in every moment. Most people lose their advantage long before life ever tests them. They react too quickly, speak without thinking, and let their emotions drag them into situations they could have avoided with a moment of patience. When you watch closely, you notice how easily power slips away from those who cannot slow themselves down. A single impulsive comment exposes more than they intend. A rushed decision reveals fear instead of strength. In a world that moves fast, the person who can stay steady gains an edge that others never see coming. Self-control is not about suppression, it is about direction. It gives you the ability to choose your response instead of being carried by whatever feeling rises first. When you take that control seriously, you begin to notice how much chaos used to live inside you. Decisions become clearer, conflict becomes quieter. You stop handing your power to moments that don't deserve it. The more disciplined you become, the easier it is to walk through situations that shake everyone else. Most people don't fail because they are weak. They fail because they are inconsistent. They let small urges decide their actions, and those small urges accumulate into a life filled with regrets. When you choose discipline over impulse, you immediately separate yourself from the majority. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to prove it. The difference shows in how calmly you move, how little you react, and how rarely you let the world tell you who to be. Silence carries a weight that loud voices rarely achieve. When you say only what matters, people listen differently. They lean in, trying to catch meaning in the spaces you leave unspoken. Most conversations are filled with noise, yet the person who chooses restraint stands out without trying. Their words feel measured, intentional, and steady. This quiet presence creates an authority that doesn't need volume to be felt. Speaking less is not about holding back your thoughts. It is about choosing the right moment to reveal them. When you are selective with your voice, you protect your clarity. You avoid being pulled into arguments that go nowhere, and you keep your energy for situations that deserve it. Others begin to notice that you never rush to respond. They sense that you think before you speak, and that thoughtfulness makes your perspective feel heavier. Restraint also changes the way you observe the world. When you are not focused on being heard, you notice details others overlook. Tone, hesitation, small shifts in attitude. These signs become easier to read when you are not filling the air with your own reactions. Over time, your silence becomes a signal. People interpret it as confidence today. Emotional distance gives you a clearer view of the world. When you are not tangled in every feeling that passes through you, situations become easier to understand. You step back just enough to see the intention behind actions instead of being pulled into the noise they create. Most conflicts lose their intensity when you stop treating them as personal battles and start seeing them as patterns of human behavior. This distance doesn't make you detached from life. It makes you more aware of what truly matters. When you hold space between yourself and your reaction, you notice how predictable people can be. Their frustrations, their habits, their hopes, all of it appears more clearly when you are not reacting to their emotions with your own. You begin to recognize the fears that shape their choices and the insecurities hidden beneath their tone. This clarity allows you to respond thoughtfully without getting caught in the rush of the moment. The more you practice this calm separation, the more control you gain over your own path. You stop matching other people's energy and start choosing the pace that benefits you. You become harder to provoke, harder to mislead, and harder to shake. There is a certain freedom in not being the one everyone watches. When you don't seek unnecessary attention, you move through the world with far fewer obstacles. People reveal more when they don't feel observed, and situations unfold more naturally when you're not at the center of them. Low visibility isn't about hiding. It's about choosing where your energy goes and refusing to waste it on proving yourself to anyone. When you're not trying to stand out, you conserve strength others constantly leak. They rush to be noticed, to be praised, to be validated. In the process, they expose their intentions, their insecurities, and their weaknesses. Meanwhile, you remain untouched by that pressure. You're free to watch, free to think, and free to move without resistance. Every environment feels lighter because you're not fighting for a position in it. This quiet approach allows you to slip past conflict before it forms. You see what frustrates people, what motivates them, and what they care about without becoming a target for their expectations. You learn to read the room without announcing your presence, and because you don't compete for the spotlight, opportunities remain open to you not as rewards, but as paths others overlook while they fight for attention that never lasts. Quiet people live in a different world. They notice what others miss because their mind is not occupied with the need to speak, impress, or prove anything. While conversations flow around them, they catch the subtle thing, the shift in someone's eyes when a topic hits a nerve, the hesitation hidden behind a practiced smile, the way two people exchange a glance before agreeing on something. These details say more than words ever do. Observation becomes second nature. You start recognizing patterns in how people behave when they think no one is paying attention. You see how often emotions guide decisions, even when someone pretends to be logical. You notice the small cracks in confidence, the moments of uncertainty, the attempts to hide discomfort. These signals reveal intentions long before actions do, giving you a clearer picture of what is truly happening. Quiet doesn't mean disconnected. It means tuned in. When you listen more than you speak, you hear the difference between what people say and what they actually mean. You learn who can be trusted, who is acting, and who is simply repeating ideas they don't understand. This level of awareness isn't dramatic. It's steady, patient, and precise. The more you observe, the more predictable the world becomes. You stop getting surprised by sudden changes because you see them forming long before others notice. Small inconsistencies become hints. Repeated phrases become clues. Patterns of behavior become maps that guide you through interactions with ease. People often underestimate quiet individuals, assuming silence equals passivity, but it's the opposite. Your silence becomes your strongest tool, allowing you to understand dynamics others walk through blindly. In this space of calm awareness, you gain access to information that loud voices talk over. You see truths hidden behind noise. You recognize the reality beneath the surface. And with that clarity, you move through life not with force, but with a steady confidence that comes from seeing more than anyone expects. People reveal more than they realize long before they say anything meaningful. Their habits speak for them. Their tone carries traces of their intentions, and their reactions expose the parts of themselves they try hardest to hide. When you pay attention, you notice how these small signals repeat across different situations. A person's rhythm rarely changes, even when they want to appear unpredictable. You begin to see how patterns form naturally, revealing intentions long before words attempt to disguise them. Tone alone tells you more than most conversations do. A slight tremble, a sudden shift in pitch, or a pause that lasts a moment too long can expose uncertainty or discomfort. People try to hide their emotions, but their voice betrays them before they gain control. Even their reactions to small inconveniences show how they handle deeper challenges. Some people collapse under pressure they barely feel, while others stay calm even when tension rises around them. These differences are not random. They reveal someone's internal structure. Once you learn to read these cues, you start seeing through facades people think are solid. A forced smile becomes a sign of avoidance, not friendliness. A quick change of topic becomes a clue, not a coincidence. Every small habit becomes a window into how someone thinks, what they fear, and what they want. The more you observe these patterns, the clearer human nature becomes. You stop taking things at face value and begin understanding the deeper reasons behind people's choices. This awareness doesn't make you suspicious. It makes you perceptive. You start recognizing how someone's routine exposes their priority, how their reactions reveal their stability, and how their tone uncovers emotions they never intended to share. With time, these signals form a map that lets you understand people with ease. You see more. People often fear uncertainty more than anything else. They want stability, reassurance, and the feeling that tomorrow will look familiar. This desire shapes their choices more strongly than logic ever does. Groups follow whoever offers confidence, even if that confidence is fragile. Most people would rather stay close to what feels safe than explore what demands courage. Comfort creates the illusion of control, and that illusion guides behavior more than truth. You see this in crowds, in conversations, and in the choices people make when no one is watching. They follow what feels familiar, what feels easy, and what promises relief from their doubts. Fear directs them towards certainty, even when certainty is an illusion. Understanding this helps you see why people cling to leaders who speak with conviction, even without proof. They are not following the leader. They are following the feeling of safety that voice creates. Insecurity pushes people toward predictability, and predictability becomes a comfort they guard fiercely. Even those who claim to be independent are influenced by the fear of losing acceptance or stability. Once you understand these motivations, group behavior stops feeling chaotic. You see the invisible pull that draws people together and the silent pressure that keeps them in place. Their choices become easier to interpret because you recognize the fear beneath their actions and the comfort they try to protect. With this clarity, you stop expecting people to act against their nature and start understanding the forces that shape their paths. Around them, seeing patterns in human behavior gives you a quiet sense of stability. When you understand why people react the way they do, their actions stop surprising you. You no longer get pulled into every emotional shift around you because you see the structure beneath it. This awareness doesn't give you control over others, but it gives you control over your responses. You become steadier, calmer, and more intentional because nothing feels random anymore. Even tense situations lose their edge when you recognize the familiar patterns shaping them. Predictability becomes a strength, not because it gives you power over people, but because it frees you from reacting impulsively. You start moving with intention, choosing your direction instead of being influenced by the shifting emotions of others. This steady mindset creates a calm presence around you, one that makes challenges feel manageable and decisions feel clear. You begin trusting your perception more. Most people rush into action because stillness feels uncomfortable to them. They move quickly to quiet their anxiety, to feel in control, or to convince themselves they're making progress. But haste almost always reveals uncertainty. When you learn to wait, not out of fear, but out of intention, your decisions become sharper. You stop reacting to the first opportunity opportunity that appears, and start recognizing the better ones forming quietly in the background. Delayed action isn't weakness. It's the ability to see beyond the moment. The world moves fast, but power moves slowly. The strongest position often comes to the person who can endure silence, who can sit with uncertainty without forcing an outcome. When you wait, you gather information others overlook. You watch how situations evolve, how people reveal themselves under pressure, and how time exposes what words try to hide. Every extra moment gives you clarity, and clarity is the foundation of every effective move. Patience turns chaos into structure. You stop feeling threatened by what you don't know because time fills in the detail. Instead of rushing toward the first open door, you begin to realize that doors open and close constantly, most of them leading nowhere. The advantage comes from choosing the moment when the path is clear, when resistance is low, and when your action has the highest impact. Waiting becomes its own form of quiet dominance. You move not because the moment forces you to, but because you chose the moment yourself. When you act only at the right time, your movements feel effortless. Instead of fighting against obstacles, you move with the flow of events, using their momentum instead of your own. Precision always beats speed because speed depends on effort, while precision depends on understanding. You notice when the noise settles, when people stop paying attention, and when the situation becomes easy to influence without anyone realizing it. Acting too early creates resistance. Acting too late creates regret. Acting at the perfect moment creates impact. Strategic timing doesn't mean waiting forever. It means learning to sense when everything aligns, when emotions cool, when information becomes clear, and when the environment quietly opens a space for you. In those moments, even a small move feels powerful. You don't have to push. You don't have to force. You simply step forward while the world is unprepared to resist. This kind of movement creates its own calm. You don't chase outcomes. You shape them. You don't compete with the chaos around you. You rise above it. Each action becomes deliberate, clean, and controlled, driven by awareness instead of urgency. Over time, you begin to trust your judgment more. You realize that mastery isn't about doing more, but about choosing when to do what truly matters. A powerful reputation isn't built by shouting, threatening, or constantly proving yourself. The strongest people move through life with a quiet kind of certainty, the kind that doesn't need to flex because it genuinely exists. Machiavelli understood that a reputation you must constantly defend is not power, it's insecurity wearing a mask. Real authority comes from a presence so stable that others feel it before you ever speak. This chapter shows you how to build that kind of identity, one that stands on its own, without noise, without explanation, and without fear. True strength rarely announces itself. You don't need to convince anyone when you are genuinely secure in who you are and what you're capable of. Machiavelli wrote that the lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves, meaning you need both force and subtlety. But subtlety is often the more powerful of the two. A person who talks constantly about being strong usually isn't. A person who keeps proving themselves is quietly terrified that someone will expose their lack of substance. But the person who stays calm, collected, and unbothered becomes magnetic. People sense something different about them, something steady, grounded, and quietly dangerous. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. When you don't react to every insult or challenge, you send out a message far louder than words. I know my power, and I don't need your validation to confirm it. This is how true reputations form, in the spaces where you choose not to speak, not to fire back, not to waste energy. When your presence itself becomes the message, you've crossed into real power. People start adjusting their tone around you. They begin taking your words more seriously because you don't use many of them. And most importantly, you gain leverage, the rare ability to act without announcing, to influence without forcing, to win without noise. Reputation is not built in a day. It forms through patterns. People trust consistency more than charisma, talent, or confidence. Machiavelli emphasized that a leader must be predictable in discipline and dependable in action. People follow what they can count on, not what occasionally shines. Consistency is the most underrated form of power. When you show up on time, finish what you start, keep your word, and handle your responsibilities without excuses, you become different from the crowd. Most people fluctuate with their emotions. You become steady. Most people lose focus. You become reliable. Most people change with every setback. You become immovable. Reliability builds influence because it makes people feel safe around you, and people always gravitate towards stability. Your reputation starts forming quietly. They always deliver. They stay solid, even under pressure. This creates a foundation no attack can shake. When someone tries to question your character, your consistency speaks louder than any defense you might give. You don't need to argue. Your actions have already done the talking. Over time, this kind of reputation becomes self-sustaining. You no longer have to defend yourself because your behavior has built a record stronger than words. People don't doubt you because you've given them no reason to. When you're consistently reliable, your reputation becomes an armor, one you never have to lift a finger to protect. People rarely act without reason. Every choice, every reaction, and every word is guided by some interest, need, or desire. The trick is learning to see these motives clearly. When you begin paying attention, you notice patterns. The colleague who always seeks approval, the friend who fears confrontation, the stranger who masks ambition behind charm. Understanding these underlying drivers changes everything. Conflict often arises not because someone wants to oppose you, but because their needs clash with yours or with the expectations they project onto you. When you can identify what truly matters to the other person, tension diminishes. You see the invisible lines connecting actions to desires, and suddenly interactions that once felt unpredictable become navigable. Awareness lets you adjust without forcing, align without manipulating, and respond without reacting. Instead of struggling against the current, you learn to move with it. People notice your calm, steady presence. They feel understood, even when they cannot articulate it. They respond to clarity and thoughtfulness, not aggression. By focusing on interests instead of intentions, you create space for smoother exchanges. You recognize the moments to listen, the moments to speak, and the moments to stay silent. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to maintain equilibrium while subtly guiding dynamics toward outcomes that favor clarity, efficiency, and mutual understanding. You start moving through groups, conversations, and networks with the ease of someone who understands the hidden architecture of human behavior, noticing motives without judgment, interpreting actions without bias, and adapting without sacrificing integrity. Guiding people doesn't require dominance, it requires subtlety. Redirection is the art of influencing outcomes without resistance. You don't demand attention, you shift it. You don't confront, you guide. When someone expresses a strong opinion or resists a suggestion, you create a path that allows them to arrive at the same conclusion themselves. The moment someone feels forced is the moment tension spikes and resistance grows. By introducing ideas gently through questions, pauses, and reframing, you make the transition seamless. They think it's their choice, yet the direction is yours. The key is to maintain calm and consistency. Small nudges delivered at the right time create momentum that feels natural. Over time, this skill allows you to steer conversations, decisions, and behaviors without anyone noticing the hand behind the motion. Subtlety ensures cooperation without confrontation. You achieve results while preserving relationships, minimizing friction, and maintaining influence. Real power rarely comes from control. It comes from understanding. Insight into people's motives, fears, and desires allows influence to arise organically. You notice what drives decisions and anticipate moves before they happen. You don't force outcomes. You allow them to align with the natural flow of events. People feel guided rather than coerced, respected rather than pressured. The calm intelligence required to navigate without aggression cultivates a presence others trust and a mind that sees the unseen. Influence becomes effortless because it stems from comprehension rather than dominance. The quieter your understanding, the more secure and stable your impact. By mastering observation, empathy, and timing, you gain an advantage that cannot be challenged by force. Mastery begins within. Before you can navigate the chaos of the world, you must first understand the turbulence inside yourself. Most people react to life because they have not learned to respond to themselves. Emotions surge, thoughts scatter, and decisions are guided by impulses rather than intention. Internal strength is not about suppressing feeling. It is about observing them, understanding them, and moving with clarity despite them. When you develop this steadiness, the storms outside matter far less. Arguments lose their sting, setbacks become data, and uncertainty feels like an invitation rather than a threat. You start noticing the difference between what is urgent and what is important, between noise and signal. Life no longer dictates your pace, you dictate yours. The mind that can endure its own chaos is unshakable in the face of external pressure. You cultivate resilience through reflection reflection, disciplined thought, and deliberate action. This inner alignment creates a foundation that makes decisions clearer, reactions calmer, and present steadier. When the external world shakes, it no longer unravels you, because you have already learned to hold yourself together. By mastering yourself first, you transform confusion into clarity, fear into observation, and reaction into control. The advantage is quiet but immense, creating a mental environment where choices come from power rather than panic, and where every step is deliberate, measured, and intentional. Internal mastery is the ultimate preparation for any challenge, granting a calm dominance over circumstances that most never achieve. Becoming unbreakable requires endurance, patience, and sovereignty over your mind. Life will challenge you in ways that seem unfair, and situations will test the limits of your composure. The person who does not break is not the one who avoids hardship, they are the one who meets it without surrender. Calm endurance is cultivated through repeated exposure to difficulty, each moment reinforcing the mind's capacity to remain steady. Sovereignty means that no external opinion, insult, or pressure can dictate your inner state. You learn to anchor yourself in principles, priorities, and understanding, so that no disruption outside can disturb the order within. This mindset is quiet but unyielding. When others panic, you notice patterns instead of chaos. When emotions run high, you observe instead of reacting. You recognize what is within your control and what is not, and you invest energy only where it matters. Each choice becomes a reflection of your inner alignment, not a concession to circumstance. This requires patience and a relentless commitment to self. Over time, this composure becomes reflexive. You no longer need to think to maintain steadiness. It is embedded in how you move, speak, and decide. The unshakable mindset transforms uncertainty into a playground for clarity, challenges into lessons, and setbacks into strategies. Emotional reinforcement grows naturally as your consistency proves to yourself that you can endure, adapt, and emerge intact. Self-belief is no longer fragile or conditional, it becomes a constant, quiet companion, silently guiding your actions and calibrating your presence. With this foundation, every decision carries weight, every step is deliberate, and every encounter becomes navigable with calm authority. Walking your path requires no approval. Most people seek validation before taking action, letting permission or recognition determine their steps. Independence begins when you move without asking for consent from the world around you. You develop clarity about what matters and confidence about where you are going. The choices you make reflect your principle, not the expectations of others. With each step, you reinforce your own authority over your life. Obstacles no longer intimidate because your direction is internal, not dictated externally. Moving with this quiet confidence, you are capable of navigating life with purpose, precision, and a sense of inevitability that comes from knowing your own strength. You walk your path unbothered, unshaken, and entirely self-directed.